how I got my first job. So I decided to go to a boot camp. Portfolio is what gets you in the door, but what actually gets you the job is the conversation around your work. Network early because you don't know people's career path. Like, no, if you're the second employee at a startup and you're getting equity, you have to have ownership, you have to have autonomy, you have to be bought in.
So welcome to the FAANG Show podcast, Sean. Thank you so much for taking out time today for this episode. And for those who do not know Sean, guys, Sean is a iOS engineer, and more than that, he is a YouTuber who has more than 1 lakh subscriber base, and he has been serving content for last more than 7 years to the iOS community. And I really want to appreciate you for the same, Sean, the job that you have been doing. I know that you are doing it out of your interest and curiosity, but the help which it is doing to the whole community, I think that's commendable. So I will now like to hand over the mic to you to give your introduction.
No problem. Thanks for having me on the show, Mike. Yeah, like you said, I'm a YouTuber now, about 120,000 subscribers, been doing it since March of 2017, so almost 7 years. How that got started was out of spite. I always like to tell this story. I was living in San Francisco, for 5 years as a junior developer. That's how I got started. At 32, I decided I was going to learn how to code. So I went on YouTube. I basically was the person who my audience is. I was just devouring YouTube videos, learning how to code on my own. And basically, as many people out there that are doing that themselves may know, I started trying to interview at the big companies out in San Francisco, right? The Googles, the Facebooks. This is back in 2016, 2017. And I got my butt kicked in the interviews because I didn't know data structures and algorithms, because I was self-taught, just a YouTube learner, if you will, and got destroyed. And I felt cheated because I felt like I was better than I was letting on in these interviews, because again, it was all data structures and algorithms, not iOS stuff. So I was like, you know what? Let me just put my knowledge out there. So I started the YouTube channel because I was mad. And I was like, I'm smarter than what I'm putting on these interviews. Like, here, I'm just going to put out YouTube videos for years. And then hopefully, 3-4 years down the line, I'll get hired sight unseen because people will know what I can do, right? I'll build up a name for myself. And that plan kind of played out. But it's just funny that the origin of the YouTube channel was because I was mad. So that's how it got started.
It is fascinating to know that you already had this plan in mind that after, down the line, after maybe 3-4 years, people will recognize you, and then it will help you to sort of get hired by some company. So when you got into the iOS field itself, Sean, what did you had in mind? Like, why did you choose iOS only, and what was your first preference even before that? Could you elaborate on that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll tell a quick, 1-minute story about why I even became a developer. So when I moved out to San Francisco, I moved out there. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a job. I just wanted to be involved in startups, but I was more on the sales and growth side of things. And I got my first job at a small 5-person startup, and I was doing the sales and growth and marketing. And the people that are at a 5-person startup, you'll know you have to do a lot, right? I didn't want to bug my developers who were trying to build the product to build my marketing landing pages on a simple static website. So I started learning how to build static websites for my marketing, so I could target my Google AdWords to those, marketing pages. And then I just caught the bug, right? I started learning HTML and CSS, and it was like magic to me that, oh yeah, I have this idea in my head. I type a little bit on my computer, and then boom, it's on the screen, and it exists on the internet. Like, that just blew my mind. So that's what made me want to become a developer, and why iOS was just, I was an Apple fanboy, to put it blunt, and we were currently trying to build a mobile app for the product at the startup. And because we only had one developer, again, this is back in 2014, 2015, just to give a time frame. And they were building it in what was called, I believe it's called Ionic. It was basically a cross-platform thing. It's kind of like PhoneGap. It was one of those, hey, write JavaScript once and you get an app on Android and iPhone. As we all know, as named developers, it turned out to be a horrible app. And I was one of the primary testers of the app in the thing. And I just remember hating the app. I was like, we're building a horrible product. I hate this. So when I became a developer, I was like, no, none of this cross-platform garbage. I'm building native. So, and I was an Apple fanboy. So there you go. That's why a native iOS developer was the only path. I didn't try other stuff and consider it. I knew right away, no, that's what I want to build.
Right. That's amazing. So how did you land your very first job after getting into the iOS development? And before that, even I would like to ask you that how did you start off with learning iOS development? Was it Apple Docs? Was it some YouTube
No, it was
yeah.
Yeah, it was I don't remember a specific YouTube creator, because I think I started with like Code Academy at first, because that's what I had used to learn HTML and CSS for my website,
Okay.
the website stuff. So I'd already was familiar with it. So I started there. And then I'm sure I found some YouTubers. But remember, in 2014, 2015, YouTube was a vastly different space as far as like iOS
Right.
creator. Right now, there's a
Right.
ton of people putting out tutorials and stuff. Back then, there was like two, and it wasn't a lot,
Right.
and Swift didn't exist yet. So, there wasn't a whole lot of Objective-C tutorials. Um, but that was also a main catalyst for me looking to actually go all in on becoming a developer was the release of Swift, because I knew I was going iOS development and I just started learning Objective C and I was like a little frustrated with it. And I was like, this is hard. And then Swift came out and, I was in San Francisco, so I know a ton of developers, right? So talking to a lot of
Right.
developers, they were like, this is the perfect time to switch because everyone is kind of like getting reset a little bit, not completely reset to my level, but everyone's kind of a beginner again in Swift.
Right.
So Swift coming out was a big reason I switched. And how I got my first job, so I decided to go to a boot camp. It was called Mobile Makers. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was in San
Okay.
Francisco. So it was 2 months. I think it was like 11 grand or something like that for 2 months. And I've said this about boot camps because I get this question all the time. Boot camps teaches you the absolute basics. And like I
Right.
said, with so many people putting out tutorials on YouTube, you can learn those absolute basics for free. You don't have to spend 11 grand going to a boot camp. But what it was good for was it forced me to go every day for 8 to 10 hours a day to learn. Whereas, like, if you're a self learner, chances are you're not going to study for 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. Like, come on. And
That's
it was
true.
nice starting to build a network and just learning, like being able to talk to other people about what we're learning. Like, that's
Right.
valuable too. And learning to work with other developers. So that is what a bootcamp is good for. And I mentioned the network. My bootcamp only had 8 people in it, but two of them went on to work for Apple, 2, 3, 4 years down
Okay.
the line. Not right out of boot camp, right?
Okay.
But it's kind of what I always say about networking. It's like network early because you don't know people's career path and where they'll end up.
That's true.
Um, so boot camp was good for that. But yeah, after the boot camp, I didn't like have a job lined up out of the boot camp, but I just started applying to companies. It took me 60 applications, which at the time I thought was a lot, but now that I hear
The
everyone else's
application.
stories, yeah, that's actually not a lot. I've heard of plenty of people spending, 100 applications, 200 applications to get their first job. So my stats were
Oh my
I did
God.
60 applications in Silicon Valley and got 3 interviews and bombed all three, except the one interview I did okay on. And then they basically put me in the no pile, but I showed initiative on being like, hey, I know I messed up that interview. I basically asked for a take home project. They didn't give me a take home project. I said, hey, is there anything I can do over the weekend to show you my skills? I feel like I'm better than what
Right.
I'm a horrible interviewer. Like, I don't know, like somebody could be looking over my shoulder and I couldn't type my name. Like it's just I'm a horrible interviewer. So basically they gave me the take home project. I knocked it out over the weekend, gave it to them on Monday, and it was like really good. And that's what they said. They're like, wow, like, this is really good for knocking it out over the weekend. Come in, let's talk to the team for the final interview. So I kind of like went from the no pile to the yes pile, and then that's how I ended up getting my very first ever job.
Okay. Okay. So, what would you recommend somebody today, Sean, if somebody wants to crack, or I would say, just make it to the interview? Then, what three advices would you give to somebody who is currently preparing and wants to apply, which worked for you and didn't work for you according to your learnings? What are those three advices that you would like to give to anybody?
Yeah, so the advice is tricky because it's very market specific. Meaning, like what happens in India is probably vastly different than in San Francisco. What happens in San Francisco is probably vastly different than Middle America. So, what I typically recommend though is when you're a junior trying to get your first job, no one cares about your resume because like there's nothing on your resume that matters.
True.
Like you've never had a developer job, like no one cares what you did before. So that's why I believe the portfolio is such a huge thing because in
Right.
software development, it's all about, hey, show me what you can do. Like, I don't care what your resume says, show me what you can do. So having a portfolio in a GitHub repo they can check out. Now, no one's going to actually dig through your code because they don't have time, right? They're reviewing 60 applicants. They're not going to dig through 60 people's
Right.
code bases. It's not going to happen. So that's why I always recommend your GitHub README, have a bunch of pictures, have a little blurb on like what you did, what technology you used, what you learned, what you're most proud of, kind of give some bullet points about the project, show some nice pictures. And then what that does is that allows the person interviewing you to have questions to ask you. Because I believe there's two parts. And for context, real quick, I'm talking about small startups hiring new developers because I believe that's the new developer's best chance. If you're trying to get your first ever developer job, don't apply to Google, don't apply to Facebook. Like, it's not just, you're wasting your time. So the typical career path is start at the small startup and then maybe do that for a year and a half. And then for another year and a half, go to a bigger company. And then once you've had 3 or 4 years experience, then go for the big leagues if you want to. So that's why I'm focusing on trying to get hired at a small startup. And their hiring practices are way different than the big companies. You know, there's two different worlds, big companies versus the super small startup. The super small startup is usually one person who's like not a hiring manager, like, hey, go hire someone, go find someone. So it's one person like sifting through all these people and all these resumes and portfolios. So that's why like learning how to like market yourself and present, I should say market might be the wrong word, present your work and present yourself in a manner that person can easily learn about you rather than making them dig. Because as someone who's hired in that situation, if someone makes me dig, they just say, here's my GitHub link. And I go to your GitHub and I was like, you just want me to just dig through your code bases randomly? Like, no, like make it easy for that person who is learning about you to learn the best things about you. Like put your best foot forward, all that stuff. And then, yeah, like I said, the portfolio shows what you can do, because the 2 stages I like to do when I was hiring people was, one, the people that showed me what they can do and made it easy for me, they made it to the next phase. But the next phase was having a conversation about your work. Because I believe like giving some like technical, you know, question, hey, solve this reverse linked list, kind of silly question. Like that doesn't really tell me much about you. But if I just, again, from the small startup's perspective, if I see your project and I say, hey, why did you choose to do this instead of this? And there's no right or wrong answer, but I want to hear your reasoning, your thought process. So I guess that's the other piece of advice is be able to think through the problems and explain yourself rather than, I think a lot of new developers go the memorization route where they like try to memorize the textbook answer and then they regurgitate that.
And sometimes I have also seen that some people do not even make projects, real projects, or maybe just copy code, paste from internet and something like that. And when they actually face the interviewer, then they're not able to answer the detailed question about that application itself.
Yeah. That's why I would say like that portfolio is what gets you in the door, but what actually gets you the job is the conversation around your work and how you can speak about your work. So that's why, like you said, copying and pasting, that's just going to get you nowhere. Be able to speak about your work.
All right. So when you had this transition where you were into the junior developer role and you made it to the mid-level, right? Over the years. So what was your observation coming to the mid-level role, that what were those things which you're not doing at work, which you were doing now at the mid-level, iOS engineer level? So what has been your observation on that?
Yeah. So also the thing is my whole career is spent at mostly startups before I went off and did my own thing with the YouTube thing. So that whole mid-level, junior, mid-level, senior, that's really a thing for larger companies where those you do different things there. Yeah. At startups, it was kind of like, I don't know, I'm just an iOS engineer. There was no like levels. I will say, to kind of answer that question, give some insights. Yeah, my first job was junior, and they hired 2 junior developers. This startup trying to save money. So it was like the blind leading the blind. So I felt like I learned a lot, but I also probably developed a lot of bad habits. But here's where I feel like my career took off, at least with my learning, not necessarily like financial success and all that, but my learning, where I actually started to feel like a real developer, was about a year and a half into my career when I started doing contracting. Because to give context on why I started doing contracting, like I said, I did that first startup for about a year and a half. And then I started applying at like Facebook and Google because I was naive, I was dumb. I thought I was ready. I was clearly not. so I had like quit that job and been like, hey, I'm gonna just focus on interviews, full-time interviewer. And then I did that for a few months. But during that time, I started like just happenstance picking up contracts. And over like a few months, I started picking up enough contracts. So I was like, I could probably do contracting full-time. But why I learned the most during this period and why I recommend contracting, at least for a chapter in a developer's career, and not your first chapter, probably like your second or third, is because, you know, every 3 months I was on a new project, and that went from like a social networking app to a voice communications app. You're getting so much experience in totally different code bases, apps, all that stuff. And this was the first time I had a senior developer like reviewing my code. So like I said, that first startup was blind leading the blind. We didn't do code reviews. It's like, whatever.
Right.
So now when I have a senior developer reviewing my code, it's like, hey, no, there's a better way to write this. Try this, do this. And every PR was just getting like destroyed. You know, some people might feel bad about that, but to me, that was like a learning experience. I was learning so much by having my PRs get destroyed. So yeah, that's why I say my learning skyrocketed for contracting. So I consider that like my mid-level, maybe going from junior to mid-level
Mm-hmm.
transition was during that contracting because yeah, working on all the different projects and getting my code dismantled was very helpful in like leveling me up.
Okay. And apart from like you were into contracting as well, right? As you mentioned. So you clearly mentioned that you had a senior developer at that certain, company, and they were like the person was reviewing your code and helping you out with learning more new things or more good practices about development. Apart from this, what were your go-to resources to make sure that you are on the right track with learning, not just in the sense of learning a certain, feature, how to build that, or learning a new framework. It's more about learning good practices at software engineering. How are you going about that? Because there is this one person who is reviewing a code, but was there any other way too, which you were exploring at the same time?
Yes, but not intentionally. So I was exploring because I was interviewing a lot at that time. My whole studying was on like data structures and algorithms, architecture. It was that stuff that I felt was my weak point, right? Because like you said,
Right.
building a table view, building specific features for apps, I was getting a lot of practice at the first startup and at the contracts, building all different types of apps. So yeah, that building those features was just, hey, I need to build this. Go ahead, Google it, find a blog post, find a YouTube video, cool, just like that. But to your point, like the more meta, I guess, if you will, like architectures
Right.
and best practices. I wasn't actively looking for that, but I guess through like cracking the coding interview and stuff like that, I kind of got a little bit of it. And then, like you said, the senior developer, it was a lot of it was architecture and structuring stuff too. I can't remember like specific stuff, but he was kind of pointing me in the right direction. Like, hey, you should refactor this and into this. I can't give
Okay.
specific examples because this was in like 2018, so 5 years ago. I don't really remember specifics,
All
but
right.
yeah.
All right. Okay, great to know that because even I am into the same stage where, I'm not working full time with any company. So I keep looking for resources that can help me to build up me a much better engineer at the core. So like this question came out of curiosity since you have been living almost a similar lifestyle in terms of your
Mhm.
professional life. So yeah, thanks for answering that. Apart from this, Sean, when you transitioned from a full-time role to a contract role, like what was your like motivation behind that? Was full-time not working for you? Were you more enjoying the contract work? Like what was it?
Well, so like I said, the story was I was interviewing and then I just happened to like pick up contracts here or there, and then the contracting was out of necessity because I was interviewing. I quit my job. I kind of went all in, took a
Okay.
risk, and
Okay.
then I was like, oh, I need money. So started doing contracts to survive. And then I
Right.
started enjoying the contracting. I was like, oh, let me just try to go contracting. And I stopped interviewing and just basically full time contracted. So it was kind of an accident that it happened. But
Okay.
like I said, I realized I was learning a lot more. But I did transition back into a full time role at another startup because after a year and a half of that, and this was like obviously before COVID and all that stuff, it was my first time ever doing remote work. And I just was kind of getting like bored, lonely. I was like, I never leave my apartment. Like,
Hmm.
I want to be back on a team. I want to go into an office. This was in early 2018 when I made that
Okay.
transition. So, yeah, so the contracting, I liked it, but it wore on me after about a year and a half. I was like, all right, I'm done with this.
Okay, so what after that, like, how did your career shape up, like, around after 2017, 2018? What did you choose to do?
Yeah, so I went to another small startup. It was called Aluna, and I was there for so I was there early 2018 to late 2019. So about a year and a half I was there. And when that was again another five, six, seven person startup. I got brought on to build the app from scratch. Like they had a
Okay.
prototype that was built not by an iOS developer. So self-admittedly, I'm not bashing them. They said, "Hey, we just hacked this together. It's not great." Yeah. So they basically wanted an iOS developer to come in, build it natively from the ground up. So I
Okay.
love those projects when I can do like file new project and start from scratch. Like I love those. I don't have a lot of experience in it, but I am not good in existing code bases, which I know is a very valuable skill to have. But I just throughout my career, I've worked mostly in brand new code bases and my own code bases. So I don't have a lot of experience in existing ones. So I don't, it's funny now that I'm like, 7 years into my career, I try to avoid existing code bases. But I guess I built my career in a way that I can do that. I know not everyone can do that, but yeah. So
Okay.
anyway, so I started that project from scratch, did that for about a year and a half, hired my replacement. I knew I was leaving. Like I knew 6 months in advance I was leaving that company, not
Okay.
because they were bad. It was I knew I was going to go full time content creation because at this time,
Okay.
remember this whole story I'm telling, the YouTube channel is being built on the side,
Yes.
and that's growing up. I can see the potential there. It's getting bigger. So I knew eventually I was going full time YouTube, but I was like, okay, before I go full time YouTube, I think it's best for me to have a chapter of my career at a large company, a FAANG company,
Right.
just a major big company for two reasons. One, I'd always worked at startups, so I thought it would be good experience for me, just learning the other
Yeah.
world. And then two, I thought it would give me more clout for the YouTube channel, to be honest, right? If I could
That's
say
true.
formal Google engineer, formal whatever engineer. And then it was at iOS Con in London. Gave a talk there, and me and Johnson Bell were walking back from the conference or something. I don't know if we were at dinner or something like that, but I was telling him my decision. I was like, yeah, I think I need this clout for my YouTube channel. And he
Right.
he was vital in this decision. He was like, no, you don't. He was like,
You don't.
I can't remember the subscriber number I had. It was probably like 50 something thousand subscribers. So it's not like a small channel. He's like, no,
Right.
people trust your content. People like your content. Like you don't, you're delaying building your own thing for a year or two because you think you need this checkbox. He's like, I don't think you need it. And I was like,
So what's your opinion
I,
on that now? Like, since you haven't gone to that path, what is your observation now today in 2023? That was it right to not go that path, or were you like regretting about something that you didn't try?
no, I don't regret it at all because doing my own thing. So I've been on my own since again mid 2019, July of 2019. I went full time on my YouTube channel, and yeah, just the ability to wake up every day. You get to decide what you work on, and you have to balance like what's fun to work on versus what actually brings in money because you got to
Right.
live.
Right.
So, but yeah, just I've been doing my own thing. Working what I want to work on when I want to work on it for almost 3 years, no, 4 years now almost, and
Oh,
yeah,
years.
like
Okay.
I encourage everyone to try to get to that point in their career because it's it's awesome, but it's stressful, right? Because sometimes I do wish that I was like, just someone tell me what to do and I'll do it. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't
I
want
can
that,
relate.
stress of having to. I have to invent my job every day. Essentially, every day I
Right.
have to wake up and invent my job. So that does get stressful after a while, but the pros are vastly outweigh the cons there. So no, I don't regret it. And I mean, it's hard to say if I had former Google engineer attached to my YouTube channel, like
Hmm.
it's hard to say if that would have helped or not. I don't know. I do pretty well now, so maybe it would have helped. So I think
Yeah.
no doubt it would have helped. But the question is, would it have been worth giving up the 2 years, right? Because I
Right.
would have had to work there for like a
That's the
year to
main
keep.
transaction. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, it's opportunity cost, right? Is it better to do my own thing for 2 years and get that snowball going down the hill,
Right.
or So I think it probably would have been close either way, to be honest with you, like in the long run. But
Yeah.
well, real quick, that big company experience, um, I don't think would have helped at all because obviously I went and did my own thing. I'm building my own startup. That wouldn't have helped.
Okay. Okay. So what is that metric that made you come to this decision, Sean, that now you're going full time into contracting plus your YouTube? What is that metric that can help to anybody else even to make that jump from this full time job life to I would say self control life where you have control
Mm,
over whatever you want to do over the day, right? Obviously, you will have things to be responsible for, but eventually you are taking care of them by your own. Nobody's going to ask you why didn't this, why you didn't do that,
yeah.
right? So what was your metric to decide that?
When you say metric on like what was I shooting for, or did I have to hit like a certain income level before I made the jump? Like I
So
guess which
I
metric are you
believe
talking
in
about?
generally what I have seen is that we always chase for a certain stability to come first and then we make that move. So was it the same for
Yeah.
you, or did you go all out into the game without even thinking about these parameters? Like,
Yeah. Oh, well, I definitely thought about it, but I definitely didn't wait to. So I guess my answer is somewhere in the middle of both. So yeah, I definitely didn't just jump out there and be like, oh, I'll figure it out. I have no money. I definitely had, I was a software engineer in San Francisco. You make good money. So I definitely had saved up because I knew this
right,
position was coming. Um, but at the same time, it wasn't enough to be like, oh, I have a year's worth of living expenses, so let me go. I had like a couple months worth, and because I had seen what the YouTube channel was doing with me just doing it on like nights and weekends, I was like, oh, if I have all day to work on this, I was very, very confident I could turn it into something when if I could devote all my time to it. So I guess the concept had already been proven. It was more just throwing gas on the fire to really make it take off. So yeah, I did make the leap before I had a ton of savings, before I could fully replace my income. But it was I was very confident in the leap.
All right, all right. That's huge. I mean, that's a great step or a big step, I would say, that anybody could take. But okay, I really do not want to comment on that because it can vary for, others. I can say today that it is the best way going ahead, but for some it doesn't work, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's no
Some
one
people
answer to
are,
it.
yeah. I think you have to play into your personality. Some people are risk averse. Some people want
Yes.
to make sure they're super secure. And I was single, no kids. So I have a lot more freedom to take risks than someone
Right.
that may have a family to support. So yeah, there's so many different
Makes sense.
variables you have to take into account. Yeah, I had a little bit of savings, single, no kids. I can take that risk.
Okay. So how did this creator view happen, Sean? Like, when did you come with this idea? Why are you building it? And what is the story behind creator view? I would love to know that.
Yeah, so for the context, CreatorView is the app I'm building. It's an iPhone app, iPad app, a Mac app. So across all platforms, that's a big reason I built it too. But it's basically for YouTubers to manage and run their YouTube business. Basically, give them insights into the big picture of their business to help them make better decisions. So how that came about was, again, as someone who was running a YouTube business full time, I to give some numbers, I replaced my developer salary and then some with YouTube. So anytime I would do like a brainstorming session, because like I said, I have to invent my job every day. What videos am I going to create? What courses am I going to create? So you have to do a lot of big picture like planning, like steering the ship, so to speak. So I used to run my business on a giant spreadsheet that had so many different sections to it, so many different graphs on it. It was just a ridiculously giant spreadsheet. And then I would have like 20 notes in my notes app, video ideas, business ideas. And I was like, I just wish this would all be in like one app that would go, because I'm deep in the Apple ecosystem. So, if I'm on my phone out and about and I think of something, I can update the business on the app. And then when I go to my computer, it's there, and then my iPad and all that stuff. So that's why I wanted to make sure it was across all platforms. And again, back to earlier, Apple fanboy, I wanted that native, beautiful Apple app experience, not like a website. So yeah, basically I was frustrated that the app didn't exist. So like, hopefully all good products, you build it yourself.
That's great. So how is it going? Like, it's been almost 4 years of doing creator view, or it's been like almost
Oh, no. Well,
like when did you
maybe I think,
started writing the very first line of code for creator view?
okay. So actually
Yeah,
coding it was probably about 2 years, but
two
that's not
years.
working on it full time for 2 years. I was all talk for about a year. I talked about the idea, I brainstormed on the idea, and then I
Yeah.
finally started building it. And then I did some videos about this. So then in early 2020, I can't remember the exact dates, late 2021, I think, I brought in a co-founder, and then I went hard on it for like 6 months. And then co-founder left for Apple. Can't blame them when Apple
Mm-hmm.
comes knocking and they want to hire you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame you. So that kind of set me back and kind of demoralized me a little bit. So then I didn't really
Right.
work on it for like 6 months. So yeah, all told, it was probably, I've been working on it for about 2 years, but there's a lot of gaps in between. And then
I see.
probably for the past 5 months, I've picked it up again pretty hardcore. And now we're at the point where it's past the MVP phase. I just launched version 2.0. It's in a really good spot where I'm happy and not embarrassed to go out there and market it. Because
Right.
before the MVP, it was like, this is not that great. I didn't really want to spend money on marketing. I didn't want to reach out to people. So that's what the 2.0 was for, which just came out a couple weeks ago. Like cool. Now I'm not embarrassed of it anymore. So let me start spending money on Apple search ads. Let me start
Right.
reaching out to, influencers. Let me start DMing people on Twitter and trying to get them to download it, that kind of stuff. So now where it's at right now, so it's basically no users, still very, very early, but I've just started the growth and marketing efforts probably in the past like 2 weeks.
Interesting. And how did you find out that this particular domain would work as a business for you, Sean? Like, if we think of it as somebody who is founding the company, how did you go about the idea in the first place? Did you do some research, on the customer base that it could potentially have in future? Or did you make up your mind that, this is the current requirement that I personally have? So let's make something and then we will figure out what I have to do with this. So what was your
Yep,
approach?
exactly the second one. So yeah, I built the app for me. Like I built the product specifically for my problem because I figure I'm the user, right? I'm the YouTuber that's making a full-time income that has to manage everything, schedule, revenue, sponsors, all that stuff. So I know there's many people out there just like me because YouTube is only growing, right? Everyone wants
Right,
to be a YouTuber nowadays. So this is only a growing market. So for I built the first version, the MVP, and even 2.0 is built directly for me and how I think about my business. And I'm confident there's enough people out there to make a nice business. But if I want this to grow into something meaningful, and I'm not
right,
talking like $1 billion company, but something more, then yes, it does have to expand past my very specific use case into some of the more common use cases, right? I'm not going to be able to
right.
accommodate how everyone runs their business, but if I can cover, the vast majority of common use cases, that's why when I think it can grow into something, pretty nice for me. So yeah, that's the process right now where I'm in the middle of learning, I've talked to you a little bit ago, learning about how other people are running their channel so I can start implementing those, again, most common use cases so it can expand.
Okay, let's come to some team building aspects now, since you are a founder of a company. So I think it's fair enough to ask you such questions. So what is
Mhm.
your opinion on team building, Sean? Like, how did you go, or did you ever make a team for CreatorView, or are you like working full time yourself on it along with your last co-founder?
Yeah, right now it's just me. Like I said, I did have a co-founder for about 6 months or 5 or 6 months before Apple came knocking. So I'm not opposed to bringing on a co-founder, but when I brought him on, it was a brand new product, wasn't even built yet. So that's a different value proposition for a co-founder versus
Right,
now it's like, okay, the app's built. I feel like I'm in a weird phase of I want to see if I can get this thing making revenue by myself first and then bring on a co-founder because then I have more leverage. If I could, like, here's an app, it's already built, we're on version 3.0, it's making 10 grand a month. That's a different value proposition to a co-founder than, hey, this thing doesn't exist, I hope it works, I don't know. So I guess I'm trying to build my sales pitch to where I can attract a good co-founder being like, hey, this is working, it's already good,
right,
come on board. I'm also working on potentially getting someone to do the paid marketing side of things, like running the Apple search ads, handling all the ASO, maybe reaching out to influencers, kind of more of the sales and growth side. I enjoy doing all that stuff. But that's my problem is I'm only one person, right? If I try to
hmm,
do everything, I'm going to do it all like 50% and it's not going to be great. So even though I enjoy doing everything, I got to start offloading some stuff so I can focus on, because at the end of the day, right, the product is what matters. Like the product
right,
has to be awesome. It
right.
is by no means there yet. I told you earlier, it's about 15% of what's in my head. It actually
Right,
exists. So I have
right.
so much more I want to do, so much more ways to improve it. So that's what I need to focus on.
All right. So if you think of recruiting somebody in your team, let's say it's not the co-founder, okay? It's just a team member who can handle the paid promotions for you. So what are those like 2, 3 traits that you look out for in a candidate when you look out for hiring somebody in your team?
Yeah. So for me, it's what I call, especially this it's like first employee or second employee, whatever.
Yeah.
I the main thing I look for is the founder's mentality. And what I say with that is I'm not looking for an employee that is just going to work 9 to 5 and sit back and be wait
Right.
and be told what to do. Like, no, if you're the second employee at a startup and you're getting equity, you have to have ownership, you have to have autonomy, you have to be bought in to where you are emotionally invested, financially invested, intellectually invested, to where here's the truth. I know there's a lot of controversy on like work-life balance. If you're the second employee at a startup and you're trying to create something from nothing and get it to exist, there's no 9 to 5. There's no, like,
True.
that's not, you're gonna lose if you're like, nope, this is my 9 to 5, I have work-life balance. That's fine if you believe that, that's fine, but don't be the
Right.
second employee at a startup. Like, go
That's
get a
true.
job somewhere.
That's not a
So I
fair
guess that's what I'm looking
expectation, right?
for.
That's not a fair
Yeah.
expectation when you are at this early stage and you're expecting that I would be having a work-life balance.
Yeah, like I said, it's fine if you want that. That's no judgment. But
Right.
again, don't be the second employee at a startup. That's
True
not.
that. True
Um,
that.
yeah, you're gonna lose. Like the startup's gonna lose if that's the mentality you have at this phase. Now, of course, as the company grows, you can evolve into more of
Right.
that work-life balance. But at this stage of the game, like that doesn't exist. So that's what I mean by founder's mentality. Because some people that turns some people off.
Right.
There's a certain type of person that they get real excited about that.
Right.
especially if they're bought in and they have enough equity that if it does work out, it's life-changing money on the other side of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's all risk reward.
Hmm. So, and how did you go about finding a co-founder since you had one before? So you must be having certain parameters in your mind which you try to fit into that certain person's personality. So what were those parameters that you were looking for and you found a match?
Well, that's the benefit of having a big following on like Twitter stuff. So I just
Okay.
put out a tweet and then I get 150 responses, which is kind of a
Okay.
headache because then I got to sift through all that. But yeah, and as far as like who, the main thing I screened for, because it wasn't, yes, there was some level of technical skills because this first co-founder was a technical one. I needed them
Okay.
to help me code.
Okay.
Maybe a different story now, but that's what that person was. But and I still stand by this. Like I can teach them, even if they're not the greatest developer. Like I'm not building self-driving cars, right? I can
Right.
teach the person to
Building
build
Uber.
whatever we're building.
Right.
So again, the founder's mentality, how they were as a teammate, like are they like fully bought in? Like are they, that I guess the soft skills and that founder's mentality was pretty much all I was looking for. And can we get along? Like I know you don't want to just hire your friends or hire people
Right.
just like you. I get that. But again, the second person at a startup, it's basically and a co-founder is basically a marriage. So that
True.
you have to get along. Like there's no, like you have to be able to get along. So yeah, could I get along with this person? Do they have that founder's mentality and, basically their attitude? Like, are they willing to learn, willing to kind of commit?
That's true. So how about like I think there can be one more parameter which is that person really patient about things or not? Because I know that there is no practical way to test somebody's patience, but I think if somebody's past record says that this person has been patient in certain situations, then I think that can really help. And this is coming from my experience, since building a startup is a very uh, it requires a lot from you. You cannot just go one day and say that I'll start making revenue today. You'll have to wait maybe for months, maybe for a year, maybe for 2 years.
Yeah.
So to have that patience in mind that I'll have to hold on until this thing is going to work, and to have that belief that this will work. Now it is taking time,
Yeah.
but I know eventually I'll get there. So
Yeah.
so how would you test that part if you had to?
That's very hard to test for. But that falls into what I was talking about with the founder's mentality, because that is
Yeah.
part of it. Like I have to be willing to put in work with no guaranteed return, right? Like if you're
Right.
putting I've been working on CreatorView for a year now. I could have made a lot of money contracting or building courses.
True.
I'm making no money with CreatorView. So that person has to be willing to do that with no guarantee of return. That's why when I was hiring someone, I was like, we're going to do, because I paid them a little bit, but it's going to be a flat fee. Because there's no like, oh, I put in 5 hours, I deserve my rate. Again, that's the employee mentality, which is fine, but not for that startup thing. So it's very hard to test for, because people can say all they want in an interview or even in the first month of working together, but you really don't find out until it actually happens.
Basically clearly mentioned that you look out for founder's mentality. You look out for if that person is ready to get into that process or not. It is more or less like joining some sort of army where you have a mission in mind. You have a plan to how to go about your mission, and you just go for it, no matter if you will be succeeding in that mission or not. You just have the faith that you
There's
will.
one more.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one more thing that I just thought of as you were saying it, that is very important, especially at the early phases. You have to be able to wear many hats. Like if you
Right.
just come in and say, I'm a developer, all I do is code. Like great, but can you help out with these Apple search ads?
Right.
Can you maybe create this screenshot mock-up? It's you have to be willing. It's not that you have to be like great at those, but you have to
Right.
be willing to be like, oh, I may not be great at making an iPhone mockup, but let me watch a couple tutorials. Let me learn it. Let me get good at it. So that willingness
Right.
to take on tasks that you don't know how to do, that's not part of your job description, so to speak, because that's what a startup
That's true.
is. Like it's got to get done. So someone's got to learn how to do it and make it happen. And that's basically what startups are all about in the early phases.
That's true. That's true. And do you look at YouTube also as a running startup, which is in digital space again? Because at least in India, I have seen people growing their YouTube up to a certain extent that they are now running a complete company out of it. They may have launched a brand. because of their YouTube channel, or maybe they have started a talent management firm that is managing a lot of other YouTubers here in India. So they are creating business out of a YouTube channel in that way. And they also say that their YouTube channel is in itself a business, right? Is in itself a startup. So do you look at your YouTube in that way, or do you just look at it in the way that you have been looking at for last almost like more than five
Well,
years now?
for me personally, I look at it, and this is just the way I've structured my channel. But I definitely agree with what they're saying. A YouTube channel is like a small business. I always equate the word startup, and this is semantics, with like a tech company building
Right,
software. So that's
right,
why I don't really say YouTube is. I consider it like a small business, but it for sure is a business. Like that. That's for sure. I consider my channel just a nice job for myself. And here's why. And that's just because it's just me, and you might be in the same situation.
yes, please.
Like my business, how I make money is by selling courses. And why people like my courses is everyone likes a certain person's teaching style, right? My
Right,
teaching style is not for everyone, but there's a certain percentage of people that like my teaching style.
that's
So
true.
my product is not the information. Information's out there, tons of other stories. My
Information is free.
product,
Yeah,
yeah, my product is the way I present it, the teaching style, the way I
right,
explain it. So this certain type of person, it clicks in their head. That's the product. So why I say it's a job for myself is I'm not building something I can sell later. Like I can't sell me. Like I can't sell my course business because the product is me. So
right,
that's why I say I'm building a very nice, well-paying job for myself because it's the reason it's a job. If I stop making videos, I stop making courses, my
right,
money goes down. Like I
right.
have enough library of videos out there, enough courses that I could disappear from the face of the earth and still make good revenue probably for the next 2-3 years, right?
Wow.
But it does expire though. It will go down
Yes.
eventually and go down, right? So in order to keep the business even and growing, I have to
Right.
constantly be putting out videos, constantly putting out courses. So that's why I say it's like a job. Whereas something like CreatorView, and this is another motivation for creating it, is because I can, work so hard on this for the next 5-10 years. And at the end of the day, I have an asset that I can sell. It's a business. It's not me. So that is why I wanted to make that shift because I realized a few years in, I was like, I can't sell this thing, right? It's totally
Right.
reliant on me. Now there is a path, right? I could bring on 3-4 other teachers and maybe rebrand the channel to like what you said, like Swift Anytime or
Right.
something. And then now that becomes a business. But to be honest with you, the idea of like trying to manage, a couple other instructors and build it together, that sounds like a nightmare to me. So I would rather just build a different product. So
Yeah, I get it.
yeah. So there are ways to like not make me have this job for myself, but yeah, I
I
don't want to
see.
do it.
I see. So do you have a team, a small team for YouTube, or is it again is being managed by yourself only?
Yeah, I do everything. I do the ideation, I do the thumbnails, the titles, I do the video editing, I do any marketing for Twitter and all that stuff. I obviously film it, record it, come up with tutorials. That's a lot. It's a
That's a
lot.
lot. That's a lot. How do you go about managing your time for all of this, Sean? Like, which is basically my question, and not just my question. I think in general, a lot of people find problem in managing their time with content creation, working on something else, and so we sometimes have maybe three priorities for a day. So, how do you manage your time since you are working on your own terms now? So, how do you go about your schedule?
Yeah, I am not good at this. So I will not claim to have
Not
great advice.
expecting
And
an
it's
ideal answer to it, though.
no. Yeah, yeah. And this is the hard, I guess I'll set some expectations for anyone thinking about going this route. This is the hardest thing to do about doing your own thing. Like
Right.
I said, you have to invent your job every day. And it's tricky because the thing you may come up with an idea. I guess self-discipline is the biggest thing because you don't you come up with an idea that may want to chase. Like, oh man, that's an awesome
Right.
idea. And it kind of like consumes your brain and that's all you want to work on,
Right.
even though it's not the best thing. So you almost have to be like, oh, that looks so fun. Let me do this boring thing that I don't really want to do because this is what's like best for the business. So that is the
Yeah.
hardest part is like not chasing every cool idea. And again, that's what I talked about, like with CreatorView, helping me come up with these big picture decisions and steering the ship. Because I come up with ideas all the time, but it's like, okay, which ones am I actually going to pursue? And which one has
Right.
the balance of the best for the business in terms of like earning money
Right.
and doesn't make me hate my life, right? Because like there's some things that are really good for money that I just do not want to do.
Right.
Meaning just it's just like it's boring to me. It's not interesting. That's what I mean by not wanting to do it. It
Right.
would feel like a job. I would like have to force myself to do it versus the thing that's like super fun to do, but probably isn't going to make any money, right? So you have to
Right.
constantly like balance those things. So that is the hardest thing. And when it comes to time management, yeah, it's just I've gotten so used to this kind of life that I said this in a tweet recently that like someone saw me, I posted something on a Sunday and they're like, oh man, you don't take any days off, do you? Because in the US,
Yeah.
Sunday is typically a day off.
Yeah.
And I was like, just days of the week or time of day have no meaning to me. You know, I may sit
Again, I
around
can
and
relate.
watch, I may sit around and watch The Mandalorian all, Wednesday morning, but then I'll
Right.
be working Wednesday night, so there's no like the typical work day structure has no meaning. I don't recommend that. I think it is. I've tried to like have structure just
Right.
in life, like having a social life, having, all that stuff. It probably is good to have a structure, but like I said, I'm not good at this at all. So I don't really have any advice. I kind of
All
just
right.
wing it. And then what I end up doing is like putting it off like, okay, I'll get to that this weekend. And then I put all my work up to the weekend. And then someone's like, hey, you want to go out Friday night? And it's like, oh, I got to do all this stuff. So I do kind of put myself in bad spots sometimes with my time management.
That's great. And how do you go about like we have this Slack where all the content creators are there. So how do you keep up with networking with all the fellow creators, or like do you have real friends out there where you live currently, or how do you actually network with people now that you're working from home and full time working on your own thing? How do you manage that part of
Yeah,
life?
it's definitely Twitter. I've been a big proponent of Twitter and getting on there, being active, and I've been more active in the build and public side of Twitter more so than like Swift tutorial Twitter.
Yeah.
I think I put this out there somewhere, but my channel is going to make a shift here in mid-April. I'm going to stop doing Swift tutorials and move more into basically what I'm doing now because I'm just following my interest. Right. I
Right.
started the Swift tutorial channel when I was learning myself, so I was interested
Right.
in it.
Right.
Now I'm no longer interested in learning Swift. I'm interested in building an app. So it'll be like
Right.
ASO, Apple search ads, marketing for apps, product market fit, like all the startup-y app stuff. So it'll be more towards the indie developer than the
Nice.
beginner Swift developer. So I forgot why I was going with that. Oh, the reason that's why a lot of my networking now is in the whole like build in public space. So people that are building an app, they're sharing their screenshots, they're talking about this. I've been more active in that more so than like the Swift tutorial world.
Right.
But the short answer is definitely Twitter. I know Mastodon is becoming a thing, but my take on that is I think Mastodon, I don't have a Mastodon account, so I can't speak from personal experience, but I bet Mastodon is amazing for the existing developer community. But
Right.
my thing and where I believe the new people coming into our world, they join through Twitter. They don't
Right.
they don't start with Mastodon, right?
Right.
And now I'm sure a certain percentage of them will make that jump from Twitter to Mastodon, but I think you're going to lose a lot of people there. So I think everyone, because I know a lot of people went to Mastodon and said, "I'm never posting on Twitter. I'm mad at Elon, whatever." I just think you're gatekeeping your great content and your inspirational. Like a lot of people that are building in public don't do it on Twitter anymore. And it's like that's so inspirational for like new developers, and just new developers aren't making it over to Mastodon. So
Right.
there's this huge void of great content for new people coming into the space. And like I said, I have your beliefs. I get it if you hate Elon. I'm not even commenting on that. It's just, I don't know. I think it's at the sacrifice of new people coming in, not being able to
Right.
see your great content.
Awesome. Awesome. So this is going to be the second last question of this episode, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is that what is the not so fancy side of the startup world, or I would say foundership word, which you see now versus which you might have expected? You might have certain expectations when you started off all these things by yourself, right? Because there is a hype around the startup ecosystem that today everybody is a founder, and either if they are not founding anything, they just write in their bio that they are founding this and that, even
Yeah.
if they have not started it yet, because they find it to be fancy, and they can play around with it as something that they are doing. What do you think are the not so fancy things that you have to deal with day to day as a founder, which people should know before starting their own business?
Yeah, I would say the emotional roller coaster. Because there are certain days, like I said, I built the app for me, so I use it every day. It's like the most used app. I constantly have it open on my Mac, and I was like, man, this app's really cool. But then when you see like no one's downloading it, no one's converting from free to paid,
Right.
you get a bad review on the App Store, and then you start to question, especially, and I'm sure everyone has some sort of opportunity cost, but like I mentioned before, me working on this for like a year and not making any money, like there's opportunity cost to my time. I could be
True.
contracting. I could be
True.
putting out courses. There's a heavy cost, even though it's not physically coming out of my bank account. There's a
Right.
heavy cost of me
Right.
working on this. So there's definitely doubt that creeps in when, the bad things happen. And it's like, man, did I make the right choice? Is this ever going to work? You fluctuate from like, I don't think this is ever going to work. This product sucks.
Right.
Like, what am I
Right.
doing? There's that. And then maybe you build a new feature or you have a cool idea and then you're on this high and then you go back on the low. So it's like an emotional roller coaster of highs and lows. And yeah, you're basically always going to think it's going to fail until it actually like starts working. And that's kind of where I'm at now because I'm not generating any revenue quite yet because I
Right.
just started that like sales and marketing. So I'm definitely in that like, okay, because obviously Apple search ads cost money. Like I'm throwing $1,000 a month at it for Apple search ads. And it's
Right.
like, am I just burning money? Like, what am I doing? There's constant
Hmm.
doubt that creeps in. So as long as you can handle that, yeah, that would be my only warning. Like, it's definitely not smooth sailing all the way. You're gonna feel bad about yourself way more than you feel good about yourself in business, not in life, right? In the business, I should say.
Has there been any situation where you almost decided that I'll just quit building this app up because it is not taking off now? It's been more than 1 year, and you just had to make up your mind again and believe into the idea which you thought of
Yeah,
in the on the very first day. So how do you deal with
yeah,
in those sort of situations?
yeah. So when I lost the co-founder back in, well, I think last year in like May or so, that was
Okay,
a hit, and that was like because again it was still in the MVP phase. I
right,
wasn't. So the MVP phase is tricky because you're supposed to be embarrassed of your MVP. So
right,
I'm like this is like 5% of what I want it to be, but you have to go from nothing to something first before you can start iterating and improving. Right now I'm in that iterating and improving phase, but then I was like, well, something has to exist first. Um, so yeah, at that time I lost the co-founder. As you know, if you followed me, I stopped working on it for like 6 months, and I was like, okay, let me go back to build up this course business. That's where the money is. Like, let me do that. And then I just honestly, the course business starts to feel like a job now. It's not where my interests lie. The Swift tutorials, like I was just talking about, I'm not
right,
super excited about it anymore. So now it feels like a job. It's like, gotta go to
right.
work today. I'd much rather be working on CreatorView, but I gotta go to work today. So I kind of made the decision. I was like, you know what? Like I mentioned before, I have enough of a backlog of Swift tutorials
Yes.
that drive traffic to the courses. I have enough courses. I was like, I think I can coast on these courses for 2 years. So I was like, I'm giving myself 2 years of runway to go all in on CreatorView and try to make it work. And basically that's it. And
Makes sense.
I have a couple of fallbacks. Obviously, like if it doesn't work out in a year or two, it's not making enough money. Well, real quick, my goal for the end of 2023 is to have it cover my base living costs. I mean, my rent,
Out
my
of
car,
out of CreatorView.
groceries. Yes.
Okay.
So we'll call that 5,000 a month in monthly recurring revenue. It's not that it's actually going to pay the bills. It's just the symbolic milestone of like, hey,
I
by the
get
end of the
it.
year, let's try to get this to like 5,000 a month MRR. So yeah, and I basically have what 7, 8 months of nothing but sales and marketing and improving the product to try to get there. Um, but yeah, I did quit a little bit ago. I don't feel like I'm gonna quit now. I feel like it's in a good spot. I'm no longer embarrassed of it. I'm gonna give it my all for 2 years. And yeah, if in 2 years it's still not making money, okay, I guess I'll have to create courses. Or absolute
Yeah.
worst case scenario, I guess I'll get an iOS developer job. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is my worst case scenario is still pretty good. That's why I'm like willing to take this risk. Like, I can't like I don't know. It's not really a risk if I'm being honest. Because my worst case scenario is I have to make courses or just get a job.
That's fair enough. I mean, yeah, I mean, having this fallback plan, like, do you believe in having those fallback plans, or do you like there is a concept where people believe that having a fallback plan sometimes make you not that much dedicated towards your plan A, right?
Mhm.
So, do you believe in that, like at all, or do you think that
Yeah,
it is necessary?
yeah, yes and no. So it definitely does hinder me. So because I have this income coming in from courses, it does hinder me on like like sometimes with CreatorView, I'm like, I can finish that feature tomorrow. There's not a sense of urgency. Like there's a sense of urgency, but the sense of urgency would be way worse if I didn't have this income coming in from courses. So very true that having the
True.
fallback plan or having some other income definitely slows you down. Like you don't feel like your back is fully against the wall. At the same time, like I'm trying to live
It is
a decent
important.
life too, right? Like, yeah. I'm 41 years old. I'm not trying to live off
Right.
ramen in an
Right.
apartment by myself. So
Makes
because
sense.
I'm older, I do want to have some standard of living. But yeah, I guess that's how I would frame it. If you were younger, I would probably go all in, no backup plan, live as cheaply as you can, have a bunch of roommates, live with your parents still, whatever. If you're
Right.
younger, but again,
Right.
as you get older and your life changes, that's a little different.
And your perspective also changes, right? Towards life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
Awesome.
that's a good. I think it might be a good way to maybe wrap up too. Is that's what I optimize for with my business and this stuff is the freedom, my life. Like I'm opting for or optimizing for quality of life. Like I said a little bit ago, like waking up every day and doing whatever I want to do with regards to work. Like I can follow my curiosity. I get to invent the job every day. Like that is awesome. I would not trade that for the world, even
Right.
though it does come with stresses sometimes. I wish that for everybody. I know it's not possible for everybody to do that, but anybody that's trying to do that, I wish you get there because it's awesome.
All right. On that note, do you any advice for all the listeners to the podcast? Any last advice for this episode, Sean?
Well, it depends on who I'm talking to.
So the
The people that are
majority
just
of people are iOS developers only. So yeah.
yeah. So if you're, I guess I always speak to the people that are kind of early in their journey. I don't know if that's your primary audience, people that are watching your tutorials, like learning. Um, yeah, just be patience is my biggest thing. People's expectations are always off. Like they get very discouraged if they don't get a job in 2 months, or hey, I've been learning how to code for 3 months and I'm not getting anywhere. Like it's a long journey. It's going to take you years. And I say I didn't feel confident as a developer, not even like super confident, but I didn't even feel like I was a developer until I was a year and a half into my career, like actually working, not a year and a half into learning, like a year and a half
Right.
into getting hired and working. So yeah, just be prepared for the very, very long journey. Be prepared to put in the work, do the repetitions. It's not going to come easy. If it came easy, everyone would do it and developers wouldn't make any money because it'd be so easy to do.
True.
So yeah, enjoy the fact that it's hard because that's what makes it such a great thing.
Awesome. Great words. Thank you so much for coming to this episode today, Sean, to the Mayank show. And I really enjoyed having this conversation. I just started enjoying the details about, the foundership part, and then we had to wrap this up.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for providing a lot of value to this episode today and to all of those who are listening to this podcast currently. And until next time, guys, take care. And yeah, see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks for having me.